Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice Tuesday morning over here from a nice and bright and sunny Helsinki, Finland summary session. And actually, put to discuss today is we have some very higher term timeframes closing. That's going to be the 5-day and the 2-day, of which there are many major statistically based analyses kind of hinging upon that closure, which we'll be going into right in a moment here. And then obviously following up on the short-term time frame analysis as well, we got the continuation that we were looking for on Bitcoin all the way up to just about 23,000 bucks, but a little bit of a short-term range going on right now. So I do want to express a little bit of maybe caution in the short term, but without further ado, let's just jump into it right now. So I wanted to start off with this chart. This is a chart that I brought out, I think last week, maybe. Yeah, something like that. Something like that. I think it accurately represents just a good conglomeration of a lot of higher term time frame ideas that we've been expressing on this channel. And most importantly, it's closing tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So what essentially is the chart telling us? Well, first and foremost, this is a volatility versus stochastic momentum analysis right here. And we're going to start it off with BBWP, which represents volatility, the dispersion of returns, obviously. And anytime that we have seen it get above critical conditions or just, extremes, let's say extreme expansions above about 80 percentile and then go into a contraction phase from there, meaning that it has both a negative slope and below the moving average, which also, preferably has a negative slope, there's been a nice reversion play coming off of that expansion move that typically amounts to an average reversion play of about just under 54% from that last, in this case, major low. The stochastic momentum oscillator has gotten the correct direction on that reversion play just under 91% of the time, or 10 out of 11 iterations here. And we have a chance to actually confirm this as soon as tonight upon 5-day closure. So if this one does remain above the stochastic momentum pivot, which is 19,000 basically 600, then I do look at this as a good sign that Bitcoin still likely does try a little bit higher. I'm going to give you an example of some of the past iterations of this signal because they have been, well, pretty damn good, let's say. And let's see, what's a good one that we can pull out over here? Let's see, what's a nice and easy one? Here we go. This one's nice and easy. So you can see this signal over here coming off of extremes, getting below the moving average on the BBWP. Okay, that's a setup for an actual signal. And then we look at the stochastic momentum oscillator to get a judgment of where that is likely to lead price action. In this case, it crossed down as soon as the BBWP came back down below that 80 percentile marker, which is where I kind of look at this as a corrective move now incoming. And as you can see, price action came down, pretty much immediately, about 32% actually. So within the context of this current price action, we do notice that the average reversion of about just under 54% does have a lot of variance in there. So we have seen it, producing moves as low as just about 21% and as great as 100%. If we were to actually kind of even it out and get rid of the extremes, the real average would be more around like 35 to 40% or so. But if we do take this at face value and we actually measure this one out from the current low, which is right here, then 53% would put Bitcoin basically at about 26,500 bucks, which I think is rather interesting because a few other things do line up with that area. And then of course, if we were to go with the more evened out example that I was kind of expressing earlier, perhaps more around like 45 or even 35%, that would put Bitcoin at about $24,500 to $25,000. I want to be very aggressively stating this though. While I do think that Bitcoin could very easily have another move to the upside over the next couple of weeks, I do not believe that the low is in. I do think that this is going to be a very, very long-term type thing, and this can be drawn out for months, maybe even years, depending upon how nasty the global situation gets. But for right now, can Bitcoin play out a bit of an upside move? Yeah, as long as this condition is met, I do still kind of lean towards that. I want to see that condition then continue to be fulfilled within the next coming closures, obviously. But what we can now bleed this over into is actually a chart that I've never shown on this channel, or well, I've been shown this exact one. That is, obviously we've spoken about many of BBWP versus stochastic momentum charts, but in this case, this is the 2-day chart, and we're looking for expansion. So this is actually kind of like the antithesis of the last chart. The last chart was a reversion play after expansion has already happened, going into contraction phase. This one over here is looking at expansion after contraction. So quite literally the opposite. I find these actually a lot more accurate, just historically speaking. Anyways, what I'm looking at right here is I'm looking at extreme lows in terms of contraction, which I define as below 10 percentile. We saw that actually get hit off back in early July. And then expansion from those extreme lows typically leads to an average move, as I've gone through the last 3 years. As you can see all the way back to 2018. Yeah, I could go through more, but I think that the last last 3 years is a pretty good representation of about 37.5% or so. From that expansion. The average days taken till that next high or low, because obviously this can come in either direction, volatility is direction neutral, is about 17.5, and the stochastic momentum also has gone in the correct direction just under 82% of the time. So the reason why I'm calling this one out right now is because this one is also closing tonight alongside the 5-day, and if we do see it actually continue with the upside right here on the BBWP expansion phase, whoops, let me actually just pull it out right there. When in doubt, pull it out, as a good old saying goes. Then I'd be looking at this stochastic momentum also to kind of confirm that Bitcoin's more likely in the short term to reach a little bit higher. Now, what's the pivot on this one? 20,100. So do keep that one in mind, because that is, it's not that far away from current price. It's kind of far away from current price action, but as long as that condition is maintained, I do still favor probably one more try to the upside. Again, I have to be so fucking clear, hopefully, in the way that I relate these ideas, because again, whether Bitcoin hits up to 25, 26, 27, maybe even 28 or 29, who the fuck knows? I'm not saying that's going to happen, but even if it did, that does not change my opinion on the long term here. Bitcoin is very, 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 very far away from reversing the trend as far as the macro goes. What do I consider the macro? The 5-day and the weekly, essentially. And what do we need to see? We need to see a higher high and a higher low. We have neither as of right now, and it's not going to even be close until Bitcoin at minimum gets back up about $32,500 from current stature. Doesn't mean that I can't construct something a little bit different over here, but for right now, I do think that would be much too premature. Anyways, with that said, let's now go into the short-term timeframes, because Bitcoin did hit a nice little rejection last night after basically playing out to the top side of our range that we were looking at. So let me actually put on the drawing tools and go to a lower-term time frame. And what do you know? Bitcoin did hit the 200 simple on the 4-hour time frame. So that is, is that good or bad? It's good. It made another, a nice move up there. And basically, I look at anything sideways above this blue box as more or less good. Why is that? Because just another higher low on the short-term time frames, and that would be above the 0.5 fib retracement. So that's 20,800. Yes, that is much further above than those higher term time frame pivots, but I think that this would be a good early warning signal for a nice trap situation heading on to the downside, which would obviously coincide with those indicators starting to turn down, which would imply that those expansion moves probably going to happen to the downside. So keep that in mind. Anyways, in this case right here, I'd be looking at the same sort of breakout conditions on the short to medium term timeframes. It's the same thing as yesterday, basically above about 22,500. And yes, I would be looking for the next leg up somewhere around about 23.5 to 24. Does Bitcoin, trade another short term timeframe range into another breakout to the upside from there? Probably yes, if it does happen. But in this case, I would express again a little bit of caution in the short term timeframes as we do see, bit of sideways, which is not again, not super concerning. What would be concerning would be below about 20,800 on a 4-hour closing basis, maybe even an hourly does it as well. And short term, yeah, it probably does try maybe a little bit lower here again. So I don't really have a strong opinion on exactly where it's going to go. I just know exactly where I would start to change around my own thoughts on this asset. But for right now, okay. On top of that, if we do go reference stochastic momentum, starting off with the 12-hour, it should be known that, any sort of a 12-hour closure below 21,950 will force the 12-hour stochastic to the downside. Which, Bitcoin's currently about $150 below. So that's it's not anything concerning right now. Obviously, there's a lot of time left, 4 hours, 21 minutes and 48 seconds left to go into the next closure. And $150 is, pretty much nothing for Bitcoin, but, do keep that in mind. That'll just align with a little bit more of a sideways and down first with a potential trap. Again, only confirmed, at least in my eyes, below about 20,800. If we go over here to the 6-hour, already going to be heading down and will be remaining down as long as Bitcoin's below 22.5. So understand that there is a big momentum pivot at 22,500. You'll also notice on the 4-hour, I imagine the same thing as well. Yes, indeed, 22,600, basically in the same area, let's say. And then if we go down to the hourly, I imagine it's probably flippy floppy right now and actually down as well as long as Bitcoin's below 22,100. So ultimately short-term timeframes, bit of sideways, bit of corrective behavior right here. But as long as Bitcoin again is above 20,800, just another higher low and not super concerning. Below there, yeah, a little bit more concerning, as I would be looking for Bitcoin to probably come back down and, at least test 20,000 even, and maybe even go for the range lows on the higher term timeframes. So, putting all the puzzle piece together here, I did forget to mention that on this chart, yes, I have done on this chart, we also do have a nice little formation going on right here, as theoretically, this is a bit of an ascending triangle setup. It is not confirmed, however, at all whatsoever until you get a daily closure above about 22,600, let's say, basically the highs of the 8th of July. And then, yes, that would have an implied move, which is implied all the way up to about $26,500. Very much in alignment with what we saw on the projections from this chart over here. And of course, that would also be in alignment with the 1.618 Fibonacci extension, which I do think is just, added confluence right there. And of course, the daily jewel is also getting going here as well. It's actually even supported by DMI, as you can see. And yeah, I mean, good. But the thing is that, I'm looking at Ethereum a lot right now because Ethereum does seem to be leading the market. And I do believe that it has found a short-term high right here. It might spike, again towards 1,700 or maybe even 1,800. But ultimately, I do think that it's found a short-term high. And it does concern me that on Ethereum, there's going to be major hidden bearish divergence basically as long as Ethereum's below like 1,900 or basically like 1,900 to 2,000 or so. So barring a sort of like heroic girthy green dildo to the upside from here, again, that would be kind of like a nice stopping point. So, just be aware of the long term. I'm sure a lot of people are getting very, very excited right now, with this upside price action, and there's no reason not to be. I mean, it's very tradable, no doubt about that. But ultimately, I do think kind of best case scenario is that, we reject somewhere around here, come back down, set in an ever so slightly higher low, and then perhaps get the nice move underway. But until then, I do still express long-term caution. I don't think that it's time to be like just fully risk on. Personally speaking, again, this is not financial advice. I'm just letting you know what I'm actually doing myself. Yes, I have actually bought some for the long term in the low 20s, upper teens, but that's just intended as like a 10-year play. It's not like it's not fucking on leverage either. So there's not like major risk on it. Anyways, I should also point out that the weekly stochastic momentum oscillator is also crossed the upside. The momentum pivot is at 19,550. The bi-weekly has also done the same thing as well, pivoted at 20,200. That is to say, as long as Bitcoin is above these pivots on these time frames, I do still kind of favor another try to the upside over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, do be aware that until we actually do see a closure above that region, I wouldn't be looking for the next leg up. Again, next leg up short term, would be somewhere around like 23.5 to 24,000. Probably another short-term pullback from there, and then probably sets up for another move higher. But yes, that is all kind of hinged upon, again, the full hour 200 simple moving average. I think just kind of gets it rather well right here on CME, or if you just want to go by a range size like 22,600 or so on a 4-hour time frame closure. All right, cool. I think that's a good place for me to be leaving this one off. I want to be wishing you well yet again. Take care, much love, and I've got Shield Bybit, but you already know. Bybit has a nice, they actually have a nice promotion going on right now, 0% on maker fees if you use the link in the description below. And what it essentially means? Essentially means that you pay no fees if you put in limit orders that are not filled at market. All right, sweet. I think I got everything out right there. Beautiful. More updates on Instagram to come. And yes, goodbye. Goodbye. No, take care, much love, and see you soon.